Welcome back to the weekend show. Campaigns have started, political parties and the candidates have released their policy document. On today's program, we delve into it. How important is a policy document? And how have citizens over time been able to hold these leaders accountable to their words, to their promises, to the Nigerian people after the elections are over? Joining me on today's program, Mr. Livingstone, Wichie, who is a political analyst, and Mr. Dara, who is the presidential candidate of the ASD. Gentlemen, welcome to today's program.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Presidential candidate, how is that going?
Well, slowly, but we are confident this is a marathon. You start slow, you build up, and then you win.
Have you unveiled your policy document?
We did, even before the takeoff of the campaign, we made a presentation of our three-pronged approach to the revolutionary transformation of this country that we believe is required. We cannot afford business as usual. Something radical has to happen in order for Nigeria to fulfill her destiny.
And what are those radical policies that you intend to go about if you become president?
Thank you. We emphasize three areas. The first is reform. Reform is a broad thing that touches on the need for social reorientation, social mobilization. Restructuring is actually part of the reform, both of the polity and the economy. When people talk as if that is all there is to the need of Nigeria, they are missing the point. The problem of this country, yes, we need a holistic approach to the issue of reform. So much is wrong with the system. Both the way we manage our economy, there's so much emphasis on the public sector that you need to restructure it in such a manner that...
So your reform is just another way of saying restructuring?
No, that's the point I'm making. Reorientation, for instance, is even more required than, before restructuring can be effective.
So you have reform. What are the other two?
The other are development, and development is focusing on three sectors: human capital development, infrastructure development, economic development. And then the third is security. For us, security is not about security agencies alone, which we believe have to be modernized and re-equipped. However, you cannot have security when your children are not in school. You cannot have security when your youth are not empowered. You cannot have security when you do not have a well-mobilized society where everybody is productive and contributing to the progress. So it's not just about the agencies and equipment. So those three sectors, we believe that once we get those fundamentals right, this country will actually will be able to leapfrog to a desirable level, not just next level. Next.
Livingstone, you've heard the three-pronged approach of the presidential candidate of the ASD. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, the topic, policy documents. I appreciate what John Dara.
Yes.
He's a very notable gentleman. Heard so
you.
much about you, sir.
Thank
I'm honored
you.
to be with you on this show.
Thank you.
Basically, if you look at the policy documents, one of the questions that come to mind is where are the rest candidates and political parties? Because it does appear that there are two or so.
That's why we have one sitting right here.
Exactly. Let's say this is a third in the public domain. Where are the rest documents? Or what are the rest political parties doing? Are they spectators in the polity? It's already campaign season. And the second point is, in these documents, do you have the yearnings of citizens well captured in them? Because largely, some of the content appear to be representing ambitions and the ambitious dispositions of the various candidates. So the documents appear to be as ambitious as the ambitions of the aspirants or the candidates themselves. So in that light, the burden there rises whether there is a step-by-step approach. Because when I deal with the issue of ambition, it talks about an ideal situation, what you intend to achieve and so on. But the question as to how, we will never see. Now, that brings you back to the justiciability. To what extent will citizens hold these candidates or whoever emerges finally at the various elected positions accountable? Can you go to court to enforce some of these propositions and so on? Chapter 2 of the Nigerian Constitution says you cannot go to court. Chapter 2 provides for the obligation of government to provide security, healthcare, education, shelter, and the rest of them. But it goes on to say that it is not justiciable. It is called the fundamental objectives and directive principles of state policy. So it then means that all you see on the policy documents will be at the behest. It will be at the discretion of the government of the day.
But you know, Atiku Abubakar, the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, had asked Nigerian youth to come up with a document that he would sign, that he would serve only 4 years, 1 term in office. So if the Nigerian youth drafted that document, is it something that we can take to court if he decides to,
every contract is an agreement in law, but not every agreement is a contract. It's only a contract that is binding and enforceable that you can go to court to enforce. So that will end at the realm of mere agreement, like you call it social contract.
So that's just political rhetoric?
Well, it will play a role in maybe motivating the policy direction of a government, but it will not be binding. They will not be under any form of obligation to enforce those policies. So my take is, one of the roles citizens should now begin to play is to also set an agenda. We have to rise above the realm of being issued with policy documents and telling us what you want to do. Citizens should also start setting agenda as to what they actually want. And one of the things that citizens may start demanding are some of the disputations in the land, because you cannot address all these very laudable ideas as represented in these documents when the continuous disputations in the land. We have the issues of restructuring, you have the issue of insecurity. I came across a report, a UN report of 2017 on sustainable development on the Atlas, which says that between 1990 and 2013, 35 million people in Nigeria was added to the poverty population, added in addition to the already existing 51 million, and as of today, it has risen above 100 million. So if in the coming years of 180 million population, proper and credible steps are not taken in honesty and voluntarily with the consent of citizens to address some of these gray areas, it will then turn out that Nigeria will become an entirely poverty-stricken nation, because we have between poor and rich. You don't have middle class anymore.
Okay, all right. My question is to Professor John Dara.
Not Professor, Mr.
Okay, Mr. John Dara. You've given us a hint into what your policies are as a candidate, right? You are a candidate for ASD. Yeah, you've given us a hint into what your policies would look like. But I want to say this, and I believe it's a generally accepted belief. If it were to be by policies, we've had really fantastic policies by various politicians in the past, very impeccable policies. But it all goes down to how much of these policies can actually be implemented. At the end of the day, we just find theoretical victors who come to tell us they will do lots of things, and very beautiful agenda, 10 points, 11 points agendas, and all that. So, to what extent can we hold politicians accountable for these promises? You know, putting in perspective the fact that the fundamental objectives and directive principles of state policy, as he has properly said, makes it unjusticiable those rights are unjusticiable. That means you cannot go to court. So how then do we hold? How do we hold you, assuming you eventually emerge as president?
As I'm likely to.
I wish you good luck. How do we hold you responsible to your promises?
Well, actually, we tend to get it wrong. It is the citizens of Nigeria that are responsible for the terrible state of affairs in this country. It's not really the politicians. The power is with the people, but that power has often been misused. If you open your eyes and you want a 78-year-old man who is sick to come back and be your president, I wish you good luck. If you want someone who has acquired notoriety for corruption and self-serving execution of policies to be your president, I wish you good luck. You deserve what you get. The policies we present to the public are informed by two things. Our party has an ideology of social democracy, free enterprise, and the right for the responsibility of government to intervene in favor of the weak and vulnerable. That is what distinguishes social democracy from other ideological platforms. But the second, very important, I am a veteran of 4 national conferences. With all modesty, I'm an encyclopedia of the recommended solutions and the path not taken. None of this has been meticulously, systematically implemented. In 2014, we distilled all the previous conferences and came up with a comprehensive solution. But the government of the day said it's thrown into the archives. I will implement those recommendations. And you can trust me to implement because I come from a managerial background, the capacity to execute and get things done.
So are you blaming the non-implementation of these policies on the citizens or on the leaders?
The citizens are choosing people who common sense will tell you they cannot execute. Take, for instance, the issue of restructuring. We know the people of Nigeria who are opposed to restructuring. But when you pick one of such people and he says, I will restructure, don't worry. And he gets there and he doesn't restructure, and you are disappointed, you deserve it.
I'm not sure if Mr. Livingstone agrees with you. Please, what are your views on this?
Well, basically, I think Nigeria's problem is beyond leadership. It is a question of structure. There is a structural infraction within the Nigerian political landscape. The way Nigeria is structured, puts some people at a vantage point, while some people is like a master-servant relationship within the Nigerian state. Many will view Nigeria as a corrupt state, depending on the duplicity of your interpretation, what perspective you're coming from. But I believe that I did mention that citizens have to start driving an agenda for these politicians. And it's very, very important. Beyond the rhetorics, it's campaign season already. You have people branding candidates. The last time, Mr. Buhari was branded as Mr. Integrity, and he carried the day. You have an Atiku coming on board, branded as an employer of labor, that he will turn around things and so on. But the bottom line is that the structure of Nigeria as currently constituted will not allow you to successfully carry out these missions. They will only end up as rhetorics that will sway citizens, and then at the end of the day, you determine whether you win an election or not. So the idea is this. In setting that agenda, let's take, for instance, the 1999 Constitution, because in developed societies, they bring points and want to know where you stand on this issue.
Absolutely.
The Nigerian Constitution, for instance, there are those who believe that we don't have a constitution, who believe that it was imposed on us in 1999 by a military junta. Now, as a candidate, what is your opinion? Are you willing to drive a people's constitution?
Absolutely.
It's an issue on one hand.
So, Mr. Wichie, hold on one second. Let me jump in here. I agree with you that we must discuss more of the issues than just politics and the way it's being played. Yes. But do we have a population? Do we have the mass of intellectual people that can come to the table and discuss and demand these issues from these people who are seeking office? Because mind you, most of the people who go out to vote, I don't know if you have your permanent voter's card.
I do, sure I do.
Awesome. But most people like you who come to this show and you can express yourself and discuss these issues, most of them don't have their permanent voter's card. So the people who are going out there to vote are the market women and market men, the people who might not have necessarily finished school, the people who don't necessarily know how to construct the issues in a way that you have so far. So what can they do in their own capacity to demand, as you're saying, more than just, you know, give me 5,000 naira, or, you know, the simplistic things that we've discussed for far too long during the election period?
I will address that question this way. Number one, I want to disagree. We have a high population of highly intellectually conscious people. We also have a population of politically conscious people. John Dara here has done a lot of work. I know him beyond politics. I've read about him and so on. Now, there are such people, but you have a conquered citizenry who appear to have been lost by the injustice in the land. There is a question of rule of law and justice in Nigeria. But it's more like a clarion call, the concerns you've raised. How many of them have their PVCs? Whilst we are dealing with the issues of the PVCs, okay, which is very fundamental, because in trying to address some of these issues, one of the licenses you have, or the major license you have, is that you should have your permanent voter's card in your hand. But in doing that, the question as to what narratives, what subject matters should drive the campaign that should now influence the policy direction of any government that comes on board, because what they have presented before us are areas where they will be making decisions based on policy. And they will not deviate from it. So if you choose to vote for them based on those areas, don't expect anything more.
So, Mr. Wichie, again, while
Yes.
I agree with you that
Yes.
these are the issues,
Yes.
this is the way campaign
Yes.
should be done.
Yes.
This is the way it's done in the UK.
Yes.
This is the way it's done in the US.
Yes.
But in Nigeria, it's not done this way. I remember I went into the market to interview one of the traders.
Yes.
And he said to me, Auntie, in 2019, I know fit tell you, say, I go vote the person way they talk the most. But what I can tell you is that I'm hungry. And person who is hungry doesn't have a conscience. And person who no get conscience cannot vote somebody based on
Yes.
these plans of
Yes.
policies and all of
Yes.
this. So how do we convince the common man on the street who is struggling to pay his children's school fees, who is struggling to eat 3 square meals a day,
Yes.
that let's come and discuss policy issues, let's talk about restructuring, let's talk about security, rather than let me collect 5,000 naira and vote the person who just gave me this money? So how do we change the system in this way?
The burden will strongly lie on the opinion leaders, because that is why I worry that the rest political parties, a good number of them appear to be in limbo at this time, because they ought to be the voice for the voiceless, to challenge status quo. So it begins to raise concerns as to the credibility and preparedness of these alternative platforms. But I think this will serve as a challenge to every one of them, because some of them may have come based on grandstanding just to have that toga of a former presidential candidate and so on. But there are issues to be championed in very developed societies. It takes the alternative structures to challenge status quo. So having said that, I would want to suggest that the civil society also comes to play here in mobilizing the citizenry and properly enlightening them and engaging them for this cause. Because like Prof did say here, you get everybody deserves the government or leadership, you know, it gets,
Yes,
as it were.
we're collectively deserving of our
you
leaders.
must take those steps.
Yes.
But in doing so again, I think those who have come up plain, the candidates that are already known, should be challenged. This campaign and interrogation from citizenry should go beyond the political parties. And let's begin to deal with the antecedents of each individual candidates.
Let's see. Let's take some tweets.
Very, very key.
We have Zaki Charis Asian, Mr. John Dara. I quote you in one of your statements that Nigeria needs agile and well-updated leaders move it out of its present state. I'm sorry about this. How do you intend on tackling this? So that's one question. We also have Adebayo Fumilayo, who says, I don't think Nigeria's problem is restructuring. It's actually a leadership problem. I mean, they've been talking about restructuring from inception of democracy. What are they doing about it? If we have good leadership and not these bad heads, I think restructuring will work. Finally, we have Mabel Echuwene. I'm sorry if I pronounced your name wrong. I just couldn't help but laugh when I saw official APC Nigeria's policy document. They've been in power for over 3 years and nothing has been done to improve education. Yet you are proposing remodeling over 10,000 schools. Really? How? Do we look like fools? Mr. Dara, I would like you to respond to this.
Actually, the political elites think the general populace are foolish people and they take us for granted. And that's why I'm much in love with Charlie Boy's campaign that Mumu
don't do.
He's my good friend and partner in the quest to re-educate our people. This thing is not as complicated as we tend to make it look. We are saying that is out there a body of policies that is comprehensive, presented by 2014 National Conference. We brought in the best of the best. We brainstormed for 6 months and came up with our ideas. But for me, it was not my first, it was my fourth. 2 times I was a resource person, 2 times I was a delegate. In both, I was celebrated as outstanding. I want you to know that what we need from the leadership is to execute these policies. What we need from the electorate is to select those who can execute and then participate in the process and become productive. You know, past that, it's not complicated. Now, I'm from the north. For us in northern Nigeria, politics is our life. And we understand it beyond what you think. The truck pusher, he's listening to BBC Hausa service. Every morning, he's well informed. And therefore, if the leaders, the opinion leaders, as my colleague here said, will just tell the people, we need to go beyond business as usual. So this is the guy who can unite us, mobilize us, and execute what needs to be done. That is all that is required. And 2019 still holds that promise. That is likelihood of a big departure from the past. People think it's a settled matter, 2 parties. It's arrant nonsense. They have no clue what is going to happen. They have no clue at all. The Nigerian youth is fed up. And money is not going to be the solution this time.
Really?
I'm telling you. You see, you need money to mobilize, to propagate, and all that. And all of us are going to have to find a way to raise the money and get it done. However, it's not about buying people and throwing money around. It's not going to work. And in any case, in 2015, the government, the incumbent government, thought they would overwhelm the electorate with money. It failed. This one, that's what they also think they will do. They rig or buy. It's not going to happen.
But the precedents for 2015 elections and 2019 elections are completely different. Mr. Wichie and yourself have talked about the importance of opinion leaders speaking to the electorate.
Absolutely.
Nonetheless, most of the opinion leaders, you might differ, but most of the opinion leaders are collecting money from these 2 main political parties and basically propagating the messages that they've been paid to tell. So whether that is the clerics or the pastors or, you know, the traditional rulers, these people are supporting who is paying them. So how do you intend to emerge victorious in a situation like this where you are highly depending on opinion leaders to shape the outcome of who will support you in the 2019 polls?
Thank you. There are opinion leaders and there are opinion leaders. The people, the young people who are mobilizing now. I mentioned Charlie Boy, for instance. He's a very critical opinion leader. And it's not the type that is going to follow on the basis of highest bidder. So there are many people like that that they are going to ignore, or that they will even give money to, and they will still do what they believe is in the best interest of the country. I believe that we've gone through the cycle of sell your vote and live with the consequence for 4 years. Some people are saying, okay, if we get it wrong, we'll change it in another 4 years. No, you may not even be able to change it in 4 years. Because as the political misfits get entrenched, the more difficult. The reason why we have sit-tight rulers all over Africa is because people thought they will kick them out if they don't do well. Then they get entrenched, and you can't do nothing about it. So and when a government has been a failure and wants to stay, it's no longer going to play by the rules. And that's what the danger ahead is, even for this election. But a vigilant citizenry, a determined citizenry, can mobilize. There's no way the so-called elites are probably 100,000. They cannot overwhelm 60 million voters. We are going to get the people to be more aware, more determined to vote right and defend their votes. And I think INEC as it is today, people have been saying negative things. I see conscious effort to improve all the time on the part of INEC, and we should give them the benefit of the doubt and support them so that they can achieve what we are hoping for.
Most definitely. Mr. Dara, Mr. Wichie, thank you so much for joining us. Unfortunately, we have an abridged political segment this Saturday, but we promise to bring you both back as the election campaigns continue.
Thank you.
That's it for the political segment. Up next is sports. Don't go anywhere. We promise to bring you a very, very interesting time.